Okay. All right, it's 11:03 and I will call this work session to order. And we have a few items to go through. I think for 11 to 12 slot, we have the sheriff's office and we have a list of items to look at. I would like to propose that, because we have a short time here, and also I think an overarching communication that the board would like to have with the sheriff's office. We try to keep the conversation toward roles, responsibilities, and expectations in pursuing and planning for some of these projects and expenditures. There is a list of, what some of these items are that I will put in the chat. But I think the board primarily would like to just kind of go through with you, Sheriff Reyes, and talk through, I think that there has been a challenge, certainly in understanding either funding that's been pursued, projects that have been pursued and initiated, and the board would like to communicate that we certainly need a little more information and need to play a certain role in those projects and acquisitions as we need to prioritize and consider those through budgeting and staff capacity. Does that sound like the start, the right start track for the conversation?
No, it does. I just want to start off with, I have communicated these expenditures prior to Commissioner Marcella. And that's how it's been basically since about September of 2019. And
so, Amy, we talked about budgeting for body cameras, but we didn't talk about entering into an agreement.
Well, and I let you know what that was going to look like with buying the Axon. And so I guess I'm a little bit confused. So no, I'm glad we're having this meeting.
Yeah, I had understood budgeting for those body cameras, but not entering into a lease purchase or any kind of agreement at that time to put into our budget going into 2021. And I didn't realize that that was something that you had already done. And so I think right now that's why we're wanting to have that conversation to understand some of the specifics around what that agreement entails. And so just kind of what we can expect.
Okay, so which part are you not understanding, I guess?
Well, this is Commissioner Fiedler. Maybe I can hop in sort of as a new commissioner trying to orient sort of what our role is as the board of county commissioners versus your role. Sheriff Reyes is a independent elected official, and you manage your own office department. But as I understand our responsibility as the board of commissioners, we have there are 2 or 3 areas where I think we would like better communication between the sheriff's office and the 3 of us. Even within an approved budget for the current year, we still have, as I understand it, a sort of a duty to track that budget. Again, not to micromanage your department at all, but we have a duty to sort of know and approve, very large expenses. And in particular, when those have a multi-year obligation, either for funding or in some cases for staffing, that's just something that we need to know about so that we're not getting, as a county as a whole, committed to, future expenses without some input on that. And I think also we're seeing, at least again, as I'm understanding some of this, there are implications for other departments, so there's an impact on the sort of staffing or workload of other departments on, some of these things, like if it's, modifying buildings and requiring maintenance and upkeep. So I think, that's sort of where we're coming, just want to get on the same page about making sure that we're able to have input on things that, on the budget side and on multi-year obligations, impact on other departments, that we know, and have reasonable input on that before, expenses get, contracts get entered into, or, the trigger gets pulled on certain decisions.
And that part I understand. With Axon, if it wasn't in the budget, for example, this coming year, then we would be able to get out of that with Axon.
Amy, the agreement that was shared by Tina was signed in October of last year, and so it was not yet in any budget. And I'm not clear on, I don't understand what you mean by saying that we could get out of that if we were then not.
If for this year's budget in 2021, that we didn't have it in this year's budget, then we would be able to pull out of the agreement with Axon.
This is Chris. I just wanted to chime in that the Axon agreement references, even though it's only a couple pages long, it references the Master Services and Purchasing Agreement Terms and Conditions, which are 38 pages long. And although there is a provision that essentially says if there's not funding allocated for the purchase or that type of thing, that the agency can terminate, but there are other conditions applicable to that termination. So, the concern I think right now is not being totally clear as to what the outcome of termination would be. Because for example, there's a provision that says if the agency is paying less than MSRP and you terminate, then they have the right to bill the county for the difference between the MSRP and what the county paid. And, if it ends up, you get the devices and there isn't an allocation for in the budget for them, you only have 30 days to return them. Otherwise, you still have to pay what was agreed to be paid for them. So there are some nuances in this. And I would just say, I would like to have the opportunity to look through and make sure that there aren't other provisions that if it were to need to be terminated, that the county would be in a bad financial situation.
Can I chime in?
Go ahead, Tina.
So I spoke to Kayla when this came up. So in our 2020 budget, we were way under budget. So I had the discussion with Commissioner Marcella that if it needed to, that we could use more of that money that we didn't use to apply to this.
So I think the prime focus here is that even if, again, it's the procurement and the statutory authority of the board we are the body that can enter into contracts, and especially on something that has such a price tag like this. And I'm not arguing the value of it, Sheriff and Tina. I just think that, I think that the procurement of this was incorrect, but the purpose of the conversation right now is to highlight that and not, and to avoid that moving forward. So even if we could allocate and use that, any budget savings, it's still a conversation that we need to have with the full board, and certainly as that huge capital acquisition in the cameras and that hardware, and the payment, the 5-year payment plan, that needs to be something that the board is well aware of before any signatures go on, and agreements are signed. We should have formal acknowledgement and decision on that by the board.
So then
And
how
then
does that play into then?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Tina.
How's this going to play into statute then if legislation is asking and requiring that we have to have this?
Well, so Tina, there's two separate pieces of policy there, right? That we have to follow a statutory obligation with financial obligations over a multiple year period. And as the board, as we oversee the budget document. And so that's one piece. And there is legislation that does govern this. And I do understand that, and that we do need to comply with it, but we do have until 2023 to comply. And it was my understanding that we learned, at least Jeff and I think what Jeff was there, listened to the CCI call on Friday on the legislative update. And it sounded like there are some expected changes to the legislation and some potential state funding that could come to offset the cost of this implementation.
And Kayla, I'll speak to that. There are pieces of this bill that have to be in place by this July of 2021. And the changes that are looking, because I sit on the board of the legislation that's looking to change, is things that are going to be defined, like demographic data, what does that look like, and those type of things. And the funding stream, we have had a lot of pushback from the Democratic side of the House as far as the funding goes.
Okay.
And that was initially in 19 when this was started to come around in 20. And yeah, and the reason we're pushing back, because it's not a requirement of State Patrol or other state employees to have body cameras, but it is for county and municipalities. So the funding issue has been argued for over 2 years now, and it still continues to be argued.
So the Sheriff Reyes, the items that you say need to be put in place for this year, do those impact or do those warrant and require the purchasing? And I think there was a lot of confusion, and I am not necessarily challenging or looking to terminate that contract right now. So I don't mean that to be a defensive question. But can you explain like what those requirements are this year and how they impact our planning for the capital acquisition and staffing?
So the body cams are a piece that right now we're trying to push back on with legislation, we as in the Sheriff's Association, that they're trying to mandate that we are compliant with that by 2021 of July, but not all agencies are going to have that ability. And as Commissioner Marcella had brought up, a lot of counties are now wanting, now that they're seeing how this is going to impact the counties, are wanting that funding to come from grants and what have you from the state. But that's something that's still argued right now. Another large piece of it is going to be modification to how we collect data and our record management system, and how we identify every officer initiated contact, and how we report use of force to the state and what that looks like every year. So there's a lot of software enhancement that has to be done. And like I said, everybody's on board to argue the cost now, because there have been agencies intentionally left out of it. But, you know, that's right now, it's still falling onto the individual counties as we sit today. And I, not to get off topic, and just so we can move forward and get a lot of these things sorted out, you know, I understand we have a new board and things are going to hopefully improve and be better how we communicate. A lot of this stems from a lot of the communication, and Kayla and I have gotten along really well at communicating with one another. And so, you know, is my perception that that's what I needed moving forward. You know, I will know that all three of you need to be involved. That hasn't always been the case since I've taken office. So I think just establishing that and just moving forward, I agree, just having that, you know, this is how this board is going to run versus, you know, how it was running before. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Sheriff Reyes, thanks for that. I definitely think that we've had a very good working relationship together, and I apologize for any miscommunication on my end.
You didn't do anything wrong. I think that was just kind of the tone of way things were communicated. We had, just because of the way the board was made up, and just, it was just, it is what it is.
Yeah, you know, we had some definite operational deficiencies with the previous board, and it was really difficult to have full participation at times. And so that made our job very difficult. And so in trying to plan for a budget going into 2021, I apologize if there was any miscommunication on my end. But I think I wasn't expecting a 5-year agreement with Axon. And so I think that's just what we want to talk through now is, you know, at least I feel in my perception of this conversation, and Sarah and Jeff, you can jump in if you think I'm completely misreading the room. I think we're supportive of the body cameras and you moving forward with starting to implement that. We just want to be sure that we're on the same page so that we can support you financially with that implementation.
Right. And then, like I said, I acknowledge, like, in the future, the way this board is going to run is going to be different than in the past. And I think that's something that we can establish here. So, yeah, and just figuring out, like I said, I thought I was doing my due diligence on my end, communicating that, but clearly that's not the case. And, you know, how do we move forward?
Amy, can you, so I think on this topic of the cameras, there's also discussion to request, or are we chatting about, I know you've requested some staffing for that. And before we go into that, can you just give us a status on the camera agreement and purchase and utilization by your department?
So the cameras, we don't have the cameras yet. And what right now, we're in a holding pattern for Axon to come out and train us for on the redaction software with the cameras, you know, how that works, downloading stations, etc. So we had requested additional personnel because what this legislation is taking is that someone's job is going to have to be going through the body cameras every day and going through and getting editing software as far as not having victims and not having dates of birth and not having juveniles, having things blurred out of it. I mean, that's going to be, like, legislation did not take into account of like what this was going to do to departments and to counties. What they're requiring is that we have a turnaround time of 14 days to anyone in the public that requests any body camera or body camera footage. And so just the redaction for cases in of itself of any officer initiated contact, that's going to be hundreds of hours a week of video that's going to have to go through.
So Amy, I'm a little confused because I did ask the finance department if we had made any payments or been invoiced from Axon yet, and they said that they had not seen anything. For my curiosity, I was wondering and had prepared to propose today that we shorten the scope or lessen the agreement and purchasing. But then looking through and being reminded that the signature was in October. So I called the salesperson and I said, what's the status of this, to make sure that we had not paid anything you know, she verified that you all are in receipt of those cameras and Axon has been out to do that training.
No, that's not correct. We have the tasers that go along with the cameras, but we don't have the cameras yet.
Okay. So have we been invoiced for the cameras yet?
Tina, do you
So-
know?
Well, we paid $60,000 already
Out of last
So-
budget.
out of last budget. There should have been, because that's when they had sent it was like 58,000 or something. So then when I got the invoice, it was 60. So I called Axon and she said that they had made a mistake. So the correct amount was $60,000, but I'm sure it was invoiced.
Okay.
So I'm
We would have
looking.
made, Tina, we would have made payments directly to Axon.
Yeah, because I submitted the bill to you guys. But I got to get in and look if I can.
Okay.
Maybe it went through in 2021, but yeah, bill.
So
So it was actually, because that's when they said, you know, when we talked about it, it's like, well, if this remaining money that we had could go to against that, then that would cut down what you would have to budget for the next 4 years.
okay.
But hold on,
And-
I'm getting.
So is there a way to systematically do this, or as far as, you know, getting cameras for, you know, deputies on shift, or sorry, I'll try to be clearer with my question. Is there a way to say that I'm sorry, I'm trying to think this through and I'm not sure it makes much sense if we have this 5-year payment agreement for the 20 cameras. Never mind. Jeff, do you have something, or Commissioner Fiedler?
Not on that specific detail. I mean, I guess we can sort out, you know, what has already been paid. I mean, to follow up on your point, I mean, I don't think we're not trying to like nitpick the contract. Again, for me, it's just back to the larger point that, you know, we have an understanding of sort of large, you know, and or multi-year commitments that are made. And, you know, we want to be helpful as a board thinking through, you know, particularly in this case where there are legislative requirements, you know, that as a county we need to be in compliance with, and Sheriff Reyes, as you were saying, you know, some things up in the air with the state legislature on sort of implementation and, you know, potential additional funding that may or may not come to counties.
Sarah, what were you talking about with renegotiating costs of the cameras?
I think with trying to figure out what the status was with our invoicing and our payments or validity of whatever the contractor bid that was signed last year, I was going to propose a conversation about biting off those purchases for cameras in smaller chunks, if that made sense. I'm not so sure that I'm landing there right now. If we are in a 5-year, payment plan, if you will, on the 20 cameras. But I will say, I know that the request on staffing has come in, and I think I'd more confidently propose that in what I understand so far. And Sheriff, if you can give us specific language or highlight any requirements, I don't understand that we need that. We need to comply with that piece of the legislation right now. 1, 2, this may change and there may be state funding, perhaps. 3, like any, I think I'd propose that we wait to see what that demand looks like on any requests for that public record. And as I understand it, if there are recordings or footage related to investigations, that would be something swiftly turned over to the DA's office, and then the DA would be responsible for monitoring and going through that footage for those purposes of investigation. So I'm just not.
That's
I don't
not
understand.
correct. That's not correct. The DA is not responsible for going through our footage.
In the case of an investigation that has to do with your footage, that's what I understood from the DA.
But if somebody wants to have, for example, they had an argument with their neighbor, what have you, where the DA may or may not be involved, that's up to us to get done. We always go through the footage first. So, and with this, we're going to have additional requirements to have, the juveniles left out and license plates left out. And I'm actually bringing up the bill right now to see what exactly we have to come in compliance with by this, by July.
While the sheriff's looking that up right now, I wanted to just mention, I've got the Axon agreement pulled up. And if $60,000 was paid, that's roughly for the first year, because the first year amount comes out to be $60,473.25. So I don't know if that was required to be prepaid when this was signed. I'm not seeing that specifically in the signed agreement. But it could be amongst the 38 pages of terms and conditions that go with this.
Okay, I just saw that we did pay the bill, Tina, so we did get that. And there were 2 expenses, and it looks like there was one for $4,898 for a taser payment. And then this has,
Two of them.
what's
But
that?
I know there was the 2, the 60,000 we paid, and then prior to that it was 43 or 4,800.
Yeah.
But I believe that we're supposed to get a credit, right, Sheriff, when we
That is
return the taser of $50,000.
That's
Are you returning are you turning in old tasers or returning the new tasers?
turning in the old tasers. As we had discussed, the tasers that my department had were not capable of being downloaded. They were not properly maintained to the point where they're not usable when we need them for court.
Sheriff, what's the, in the legislation, what's the requirement on records retention for your office specifically?
So it depends on the cases. Anything for that has to do with sex assault or murder, it's lifetime. Anything depends on, this, most of it's 7 years, but sex assaults and homicides are lifetime. Let's see.
So I think regarding the piece of staffing to address this review of the footage, I think it might be best if we had another conversation, including the DA, so that we can be clear on any impacts. Because as far as I have had conversations and understand from others, anything under investigation would be the DA's responsibility, and then that would have to be a prosecutor that reviewed that tape and did any redaction. Otherwise, it violates defendant rights and it becomes a huge issue, which is one of the issues that the DAs have with this bill, is that it could essentially, worst case scenario, double the staff of legal prosecutors in their offices, because you can't just hire anyone to come, or you wouldn't want to, at least as I understand it right now and have been told, to just hire anyone to kind of come and look through that information. So I don't think that I see a clear need right now on the demand of that. And I think I'd request that we maybe have that conversation with RDA and pull more documentation so that we can all kind of get on the same page of what that timeline might look like and how to respond to what we may see as an increasing demand for that service.
Sorry, Sarah, I didn't cut you off.
Okay.
We did talk about this a little bit in that budget discussion with the sheriff in December. I just don't remember where we landed on all of that.
I don't recall talking about staffing necessarily, but that the agreement included the software that might need to be used for reviewing footage and redacting those pieces.
So
That's
in the meeting
sorry.
notes.
In the meeting notes, yes, I did put down on the spreadsheet that she needed an evidence tech.
And I'll read part of the bill to you, which states the Colorado State Patrol and local law enforcement agency shall not report the name, address, social security number, or unique personal identifying information of the subject of the use of force, victim of official misconduct, or persons contacted, searched, subjected to property seizure, notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary. The data reported pursuant to this section is available to the public pursuant to the subsection of this section. This is the part open to the public. So where you're speaking about, yes, as it is now with criminal cases, agencies with body cam footage, they have their administrative staff or whoever they have designated to do the evidence, who have the body cams, and get that coordinated to go with that case so it can go to the DA. But this bill changes things. So it's not just cases that are for prosecution.
So this could be anything from like a traffic stop to a homicide.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, and today I think we have that. I mean, there's argument that if we've had cameras, all those are subject to CORA today and in the past years. So what I
But
guess
we
I
are
don't
able-
understand.
We are able to withhold certain amount of information and not give that to the public today. This changes things. That's what this whole bill, how it impacts law enforcement and how we give stuff to the public who have no business having it. That's this whole, where a lot of this bill impacts that. Where before, the people that would get this information were just the DA and people directly involved with the case. This bill changes that. Anyone, your neighbor, if you're involved with a fight with your husband, they can get all of that on body cam footage.
Like,
It's not
do you
just for
have to-
prosecution.
when you say it's subject to public inspection, do you have to like catalog it and put it on a website?
No, we have to have it, like, if so your neighbor comes in and says, I want a copy of my neighbor's, the cops were here, I want to know what was going on, and they do a request, we have 14 days to get that information to them. Whereas before, that stuff was litigated through court, where the prosecution would say that, well, no, that's damaging to the victim, this could damage their reputation in the public, blah, blah, blah. This could be harmful to the person who's not yet prosecuted. That all goes away.
So I think that like doesn't, I mean, I think I have further questions, again, maybe to include the DA on the conversation, because if it's something that damaging or that big of an issue that hits the threshold where it would be either domestic violence or sexual abuse, and it should be in the hands of the DA. It just seems that there needs to be a process, if it's not already outlined in that bill, of how we as Lake County respond to those core requests that are outside pending cases or filed complaints.
It is not outlined in there, and I will email you this bill. And this is one of the huge issues with this bill.
Well, and again, we have till 2023 to comply. So I think
not all of it. And look at the end of it where you can take the sections of where we've already had to comply with parts of it as of September of 20. So I'll send that to you.
okay.
Could you share your screen? If Sheriff Reyes can send that to you now, Sarah, could you share your screen so we can read through that together? Because I do think that that's important for us to look at that together.
I will, but I also want to, I think it's important to have, the DA's office in this kind of discovery and conversation.
I agree.
So that we're sure we're all interpreting and trying to cover all bases.
Sheriff, has the DA's office talked to you at all about any kind of staffing needs on their end to comply with this?
Nope, they haven't.
Okay,
We
so
just got a new DA.
okay. Oh, that's right.
Commissioner Marcel, the comment that I got from the DA was that they aren't preparing to increase staff right now because of so many more unknowns than knowns in the bill and any amendments or revisions or changes that could happen. But and I did ask her, I said, is this something where we're going to see, potentially a new line of work in, just these people who are hired or trained or certified to do kind of this review, and the response I got at the time was certainly not. It will likely have to be a prosecutor and an attorney, because you'd violate defendants' rights by not having having your legal representation, eyes on these, who knows what kind of details in this footage. So sorry, all that to say that her thought was that it's likely that she would have to increase her staff, the prosecution staff in her department, and not just, at an attorney level, which is a crazy expense. And so that's why I think there are more unknowns than knowns. And my interpretation of our conversation was that she was not increasing her staff to manage this at this time.
Okay. So we do know that the body cams is going to be a requirement either way, because I think even out of anything that we've heard at CCI or anything from Sheriff Reyes on the County Sheriffs of Colorado, is that body cameras are going to be a requirement either way. Would that be a correct assumption, Sheriff?
That is correct.
Okay. So Sarah, as chair, what would be the recommendation going forward for us to rectify the agreement with Axon?
I think we need to figure out what payments have been made and I mean, I don't know if there's a proposal. I don't know if there's a proposal to change any of that right now. I think the primary goal is just to understand that any kind of agreement and engagement like this with the county is something that needs to be vetted a little bit better between the sheriff's office and the board, which I think that point has been heard.
Yeah, and if I could, yeah, so Commissioner Fiedler speaking, yeah, along those lines, I mean, I think maybe on the board's side, a next step would be just to, in a way, do what we would like to do going forward with new agreements, which is just to sort of go back and look through, I think, Chris, you said the 38 pages, just understand where we are in that contract so that we have a handle as the board on what the future budget year or this budget year and future budget year sort of obligations are. And if under the contract there are any, what our options are, or we, how locked in are we for the next 5 years? So just to understand that and then match that up with, some of the outstanding, questions. I mean, I think we got a lot, and Sheriff Reyes, thank you for forwarding the signed copy of the bill. But, understanding sort of what the obligations are, like what date and what we need to have done, whether it's an investigation or just, a citizen request under the terms of the bill, so yeah, I think, yeah, just basically try to sort of somewhat retroactively do the review that we'd like to do on future things. And we may not have any options or good options under the contract, but I guess that would be my suggestion from the board's side. And then also just while I'm speaking, and yeah, I really appreciated Sheriff Reyes, you saying that, yeah, with a new board and perhaps trying to get, things running a little bit more. I think one of our goals as a board is that the three of us, three commissioners, are much more transparent with each other, and and maybe it would help. We could start on our side putting down just some, what we would like to see, and we can discuss that with you, Sheriff Reyes, going forward, just to sort of make sure we're all on the same page about sort of what we'd like to see. But again, I want to say I really appreciate you sort of what you said a while back in the conversation.
Right.
Could I say something?
Go ahead.
So when we present the bills, it's not the sheriff that's paying them. So that agreement was sent up to finance. And from way back when I was in the treasurer's office, the commissioners would sit and look at those bills to see what was being paid. So if that would have been an issue, then somebody dropped the ball between the commissioners. If that agreement was sent, and the only way it gets paid, it's approved by a commissioner.
Well, Tina, actually, the agreement itself wasn't sent, just the bill was sent. So, I mean, it's, finance is doing the best job that they can. And I think that, you know, they saw the bill with the equipment listed on it and put it through for payment. But I think now what we're talking about is just the logistics of the actual lease.
Right, I understand that, but what I'm saying though, with that big of an amount of $60,000, to me, I would have been questioning it as a commissioner. So my point is, stuff got through without people really looking into, and I'm not saying it's finance, I'm saying it's the commissioners.
You know, we have a
Should we
lot of
look-
questions on bills that are only $100 or $200 or $300 transactions that happen.
But
We have many more questions. Thanks,
Good.
Tina.
But I think moving forward, I think we're just establishing we're going to be doing things differently, correct?
Right.
Yeah, well, and I think, you know, we want to make sure right now that, you know, if this is a 5-year thing, that we appropriately allocate and appropriate funds to your budget to be sure to cover that cost.
I think the only questions I would have on the contract is some of those like warranty or software or what, you know, that add up to a hefty amount, and whether or not we need those in the first few years or not. But I think our next step on the camera issue itself is to get together with all parties affected by it and figure out, you know, what our time frame is to be ready for and to outline those next steps, either of investment of the county or staffing, based on what comes out of legislation and any changes. So I can reach out to the DA and ask her if we can have that conversation, you know, schedule that in the next few weeks. But until then, I don't think any additional, I don't think there's any additional, we don't have any additional funds to budget towards the project other than what we have to work through on that agreement. And figure out the status of that payment. Let's see, I'm looking at the items listed here. So the courthouse X-ray machine and the retrofit. Again, as Commissioner Fiedler mentioned, these are, you know, this was a big deal, and as far as I understand, never went through because we couldn't get the funding for staffing through the grant, the underfunded courts grants. And so again, this is like an operational increase that should be considered by the full board and understood by the full board, let alone some of those retrofit pieces on whether or not that machine is going to fit downstairs. You know, it was enough of a community response when we installed the bollards outside, kind of chipping away at that list of improvements to the courthouse that we've had for some time. And we need, you know, aside from needing to be informed as the board, I think it's important for us to inform the community of changes that are occurring, because we certainly don't want to surprise people with this. So where are we with the status of the X-ray machine? Moving that, I think some of my concerns are whether we have, do we have the appropriate machine for downstairs? Can we move the machine upstairs, downstairs? Again, I guess I haven't seen any purchase agreement on this machine or the grant contracts outlining what portion of this project is funded. Can you give us an update on that, please, Sheriff?
Commissioner Marcella, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So
You cut out just a little bit,
do
Sheriff.
the court security, and Kayla's the commissioner that signs off. So court security grant has already funded the X-ray machine.
Mhm.
And I got an amendment into the contract asking for 2 additional staff people. So I'm
Yeah.
waiting for the chief judge to sign off on it.
Yeah, so Tina wrote the grants for that for court security, and court security did cover the cost of the X-ray machine for the front vestibule. And so it was my understanding that court security came and physically visited the building with Tina and Sheriff Reyes, right, Tina?
They did it with Jake.
Let me back up
Okay.
real quick. So I was approached by Mike Pashada, who oversees the court securities. And this was something that they had approached Sheriff Finsky with, due to they feel that our courthouse is the least secure in the 5th. And long story short, that didn't happen in his administration. He wouldn't move forward with it. So they approached me to see if I would move forward with securing the 1st and 2nd floor and securing the building for their employees' safety. To me, it made sense. Commissioner Marcella and I have had several discussions to include Mike Irwin due to the asbestos in the building, and then funding was applied for. So that's how this evolved. So go ahead, Commissioner Marcella.
Yeah, so Sheriff Reyes and I had talked about this, and we did put this in her 2020 budget, and we didn't, not necessarily the X-ray machine, but the retrofit piece. We didn't do anything with it in 2020 because of pandemic response. And so this is putting those false walls like on the main level, right past the finance offices, and then down in the basement area where her main entrance is, where she brings inmates in. And then they go up that stairwell to go into the holding cell. And so there's some significant safety issues with that not being cordoned off. As we've seen, it allows inmates to potentially escape from custody, leaves our staff vulnerable and the general public vulnerable, puts the court deputies and the deputies that are transporting inmates in a vulnerable situation. And so I've been working with Sheriff Reyes on that, and did draft that RFP for her that I had attached in your packet. And I'll forward that to Paul maybe to look at that. We talked with Paul, Michael Irwin, and the fire department code enforcement to ensure that we weren't closing off an egress exit. And I think that was also something, and Paul might be able to talk to that a little bit, something that we had talked through with court security and moving that X-ray machine down to the front vestibule, is that we didn't want to close off any of that egress exit if we can't, and making sure that we're accommodating, the clerk and recorder's office and the voting, because that's our polling place as well, and maintaining ADA access in and out of the building. So Tina did write the grant that covered the cost of the new X-ray machine. And I think, Tina, you can speak to this probably better than I can. I think they will dispose of the X-ray machines on the 3rd floor.
That's correct.
So there will only be one in the front vestibule. And so then she applied for additional staff fund from court security for a total of $127,000, which is the excerpt that I had copy and pasted from the grant application in the email that I had sent you guys with the agenda for the meeting today to have 4 total court security staff, right, Tina?
Yeah.
Do we think that we'll get awarded that? And should there be anticipation of having to fold in or absorb or budget for 2 of those folks on our regular payroll from the general fund moving forward?
Right
Do we
now,
have-
I believe they'll do it because this is something they were after.
Yeah,
So-
no, yep. And I mean, I think the move is a good idea. I just again, like that, the knowledge that I had was that we applied for staffing and were never awarded it, and I don't know why. But, so I guess I'm coming into it with the assumption and just speculation that we would not get that. And so in my head, I think as a default, we need to prepare for a potential increase in your budget for 2 more salaried court security folks.
Well, and the budget I'll be redoing the grants actually. Should be coming up in May. I don't think when I put in for the grant for the X-ray machine, I don't think that they would have given us that, not knowing that we didn't have the money to fund 2 other people. So,
Okay. When do we expect to hear on that amendment, Tina?
so I sent John Poopries an email telling them that Commissioner Marcella and Sheriff Reyes had signed off. And I just needed the chief judge to sign off. So when I went in and looked, he still hadn't, but when I'm done here, I'll make sure and send him another email to get it through.
Okay. And where are we, did I hear right that we might not have to do certain retrofitting of the foyer to fit the machine?
Yeah, the machine, we measured and we can just put it in the front or with no alterations.
I think it's only 12 feet long. Is that right, Tina?
It's a lot smaller than what's upstairs.
Oh,
But
that's good.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think Paul had talked to Tina when the county engineer was going to come look at the building with all of us to look at any kind of construction or anything that needed to be done with the building. And when they looked at the dimensions of the X-ray machine and the thing that you walk through, the metal detector, sorry, it appeared as though it would just be able to fit in where the heater is on the, like when you walk in the front doors, it's on the right-hand side. There's a couple chairs and a heater there. And so Pro Electric has done the electrical work to allow for that X-ray machine to be there so that it doesn't cause electrical problems in the building, because our electrical was deficient in the vestibule area. And so then I think it sounds like the metal detector would fit inside the furthest door on the right. And so when you walk through the door in the vestibule, you'd walk through the metal detector to get into the main level of the courthouse. And then from there, court traffic will be rerouted back up the stairs from the interior of the courthouse or up the elevator for ADA accessibility. And then that way, anybody that comes into the courthouse building goes through that security. So like if you're going to come in and renew your license plates, you should expect to come in and go through security.
And for clarity, just for public information, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff and Tina, my understanding, the reason we have to double up on that staffing then moving that x-ray machine downstairs is because as it sits now upstairs, sharing the floor with the courts, that staff could double as being in attendance of court while in session and monitoring the upstairs, while also monitoring the x-ray machine. But of course, with that machine being downstairs, we need to address monitoring of court activity upstairs as well.
That is correct.
Thank you. Okay. And it is 12:04. We do have a couple other items to roll into with Department of Human Services. And I think the last thing that we didn't quite touch on was that invoice from the Summit County coroner, and that we will determine how to split that. But again, that's a determination that is for the board's discretion, Sheriff. And so directing finance to allocate that is the board's authority.
I'm not aware that I delegated them to do anything different.
Sorry, Sheriff, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I said I'm not aware that I delegated the finance to do anything.
Okay. Okay.
So do we want to, I'm sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to cut you off either.
Go ahead. It's the nature of the Zoom call. It's all good.
So with the evidence technician and admin assistant for the body cams, do Commissioner Fiedler and Commissioner Mudge, how do we want to discuss that going forward?
I think we need, I think we need to get all affected offices and bodies in the same conversation, to include the DA, and to review and be sure that we're all interpreting the requirements as they are outlined in the bill, and probably outline steps and timelines to be poised to pull some of those triggers if we have to. I think right now it is not a necessity, and so I'd propose that we schedule that conversation, as soon as all of our calendars allow, with the DA, to then revisit, what we identify as a clear timeline for needing to comply with that, and we all have an agreement on how to move forward.
Yeah, this is Commissioner Fiedler. That sounds right. And then also at the same time, I think from the board side, it would be good for us to just look over the contract and the terms and make sure we understand, sort of as that contract currently stands, what are the obligations in this budget year and future budget years, and what, if any, flexibility there is in the contract, or sort of.
Yeah.
Sheriff, I have one other question in regards to the body cameras. Do you have to, like, let's say you have a deputy that is assigned a body camera right now through the Axon agreement?
We don't have them up, and we don't have them. We're not in receipt of them. We've just got the tasers as of yet and the docking stations.
Okay.
My knowledge, we don't have the actual cameras yet. They're not in service.
Okay. So let's say you have a deputy that will receive a body cam and taser from the Axon agreement, and then they leave employment with us, like after a year or whatever, will you be able to repurpose that camera, or do you have to purchase a brand new camera for every deputy that comes on board?
No, it's just like a piece of equipment, just like a weapon.
Okay,
Yeah, or taser. No, they have to turn those in. It's
Okay.
and they sign for them and the condition and their maintenance and
okay.
Yeah.
And so you then keep track, and what's the replacement schedule on those cameras? Like what's their expected life?
I know agencies that have used the Axon product for 9 to 10 years.
Okay.
So it's a pretty good product. I mean, even those that have been in fights and it's gone on the ground and, you know, been through some pretty tough situations, they hold up pretty well.
Okay. So what, do you have an ETA on when you can expect the cameras to come in?
My sergeant was, I feel like everyone's excuse for everything is COVID, but because we were supposed to have the cameras already, and then they were going to send a person out to do the hands-on training. Because like I said, we've got the docking stations already.
Okay.
So we're just missing that piece and the person to come train.
Okay. So Commissioner Mudge and Commissioner Fiedler, I would suggest that we try to convene a work session with the DA's office and sheriff sooner rather than later. Because I think if this is just my personal perspective through the conversation today, if we're going to be expected to catalog footage and that footage is going to be required regardless, this could be like a test cycle for getting in compliance by 2023 or working into compliance, and putting the resources where they're needed early on rather than racing to get in compliance, I guess. So I think I'd like to just have that conversation so we can kind of understand where we need to prioritize resources. If it's for sheriff or if it's for district attorney or whatever that looks like, I think having that conversation sooner than later would be helpful.
How about I send out an email to everyone here included and including the DA and her office to propose February 9th and see what availability and everyone's capacity is to make that meeting. That would be our first regularly scheduled work session of February.
Okay, sounds good.
At 1 o'clock?
Yeah, we can propose one. Yep.
Okay.
And we'll see what schedules allow and if we have to do a doodle poll to keep better track, we'll go from there. I can do that. All right. Okay, so do we have any other discussion or questions on that? I think we have a good path forward on next steps.
Yeah, I don't have any questions. Sheriff, do you have any questions?
Nope.
Okay, great.
Commissioner Fiedler, do you have anything else going forward?
No, this is great. I think, yeah, this is good.
Thank you,
All right.
Sheriff, so much for having the conversation today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, Sheriff and Tina.
And then I will also be sending you an email after we get off, just because it's not allowing me to, because I've got audio attached to it, of radio traffic of me requesting the coroner for that bill in question. So do with that what you want, because I know that there had been his argument that he wasn't contacted, and which has been a consistent issue, but we contact him on a recorded line. So
Okay.
So anyways, I'll send that to you, to everyone when we get off.
Okay. Thank you,
Okay.
Sheriff.
Thanks.
Thanks, Sheriff.
All right.
Okay. All right. Next we have, sorry, pulling it up. We do have an update from Janine McGee, Human Services Director, for phone upgrade. And maybe not going into probation annex use, but Janine, are you, sorry, moving back from.
Yep.
Hi.
Yep, I'm
All right.
here.
What do you have for us, Janine?
Hi. So thanks for putting me on the agenda. We have been struggling with the old analog phones in the annex building that the public assistance unit uses. The child welfare unit, when we moved up to the bank building, I guess it's been about 6.5, going on 7 years ago now. We got a voice over internet protocol phone system set up for child welfare unit. And then when they came back down 2 years ago to the annex building, when public health moved, they continued to use the voice over internet protocol phone system. That's been working fine. We still have the old original analog phone system on the public assistance side. We've had multiple challenges with it. Just all kinds of things, from not being able, we have a one main phone number that all the calls come into. It doesn't, periodically will do its own thing, and it doesn't allow people to leave a message. It cuts off sometimes. It does not, it reverts back to old messages occasionally, like old recordings of the messages that we're trying to put out there for folks. And then we have to have Delbert come down and help us get it fixed. It's just so bizarre. The biggest problem that's come up as a result of COVID is that we have a huge call volume coming in. And because somebody's not physically sitting at that phone all the time answering, and even when we do have someone sitting at that phone and there's multiple calls coming in and rolling over, the public is actually missing connections with us. So we've worked really hard to make sure that we are getting the messaging out to call county cell phones that have been provided, especially if it's bilingual clients or Spanish speaking clients needing to talk to bilingual staff. It's been a multi-month process to try to just navigate it. In all of that, I've had good conversations with Amit about what our options are. And he has shared with me what public health did, and I guess some of the other folks that are moving to broad voice over internet protocol phone systems. So he and I spent a lot of time going through what we need in a setup and sort of mapped out exactly what we need to have coming in, so that we have one phone number that everything comes into, that people can choose how to go from there. And we can use the existing phone numbers that are out there to the public. That's for public assistance. And then we'll continue to have the child welfare phone numbers that people can get. But what Amit and I have done is mapped out a whole system of what we need, and it's fabulous because it will roll right into the county cell phones that are available to folks. It will roll over to next available. It will solve basically all of our communications phone systems, and I think improve the public experience significantly, as well as meet our state requirements to be available to folks. And so what I have is, and I had sent to you all, I'm not sure if you have it, I can reference it right now, or I could resend it if you want me to, a bid from Broad Voice for $240 a month, 36-month contract to do the voice over internet protocol phone system. What I wasn't sure is if you wanted other bids. I do know since we have Broad Voice in other departments, it seemed to make sense to have this added on to the contracts that we have rather than seek another vendor. And this is a pretty good price as well. comes out to, I think, what, $2,800 a year. That definitely fits within our county admin budget that we have allocated, and we would just love to get it up and rolling as soon as possible. But I wanted to go through all the avenues, have everybody look at and approve the process officially, so that Chris doesn't end up looking at it later.
Janine, I'm trying to
Questions?
find, yeah, I'm just trying to find.
You want me to resend it? I have the
Um,
bid. Yep, I can resend it.
oh, no, I see it. Probation Network from the 21st.
Okay.
I think. Oh,
Okay, I can resend it if you'd like me to.
oh, there it is. It's from the 1st. So I actually have a bigger question, and that's probably for Amit. If we have these phone networks that keep connecting to everyone's cell phones, why should we have these phone networks? Are we required to have the kind of backup by the state for your office? And this is only just occurring to me. I mean, because I think there's continued, I think there's additional
really,
problems in that public health building now with reliability of services. So I think this is going to continue to be a broader maybe conversation.
You know, yeah, and I wondered if Amit would need to answer some of those questions. I did ask Amit about that because I knew that public health had some challenges, and he said most of it was due to the way the IT network was set up over there, which he remedied. So I don't know, I can't speak to that for sure. What we need is a central entry point. So all this is really just a way to call the same phone number that everybody has always used for our department. And instead of going through a hardline phone, they get this virtual option of what they want to select. And then that virtual option sends them to the county cell phones, where it used to be hardline in an office that would send it to somebody's office extension. It's now sending it out to where they're officing, so they can, and then it will also be set up to roll over to whoever's next available, right? And it can take multiple incoming calls at once. Right now we're just totally log jammed there. So it's really a virtual network of entry points and options for the public to be able to select and choose where they need to go.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll have to connect with Amit to then see if that changes our, this is for the board's information, if that would change the necessity of our contract with CenturyLink on the analog lines that we do have. I think that would change our terms a little bit, or we could at least.
Yeah, I think that is. Yeah, that is the conversation, and I actually have the documents I have to fill out, so I will have to get with Tara because we want to keep some of those same numbers. I will have to put in the broad voice documentation which phone numbers we want and the CenturyLink account information, just so that they require that, so they know that we are giving permission to port those numbers. And we're so excited because we thought we might have to change phone numbers, but to be able to port those numbers is just fabulous. So there's that. And then there's the payment arrangement of like where the billing actually goes to, if we want to have that come out of the broad voice requires a county credit card. So I don't know if that needs to come out of our department side or Tara's side and she bills us, but we can walk through those details. I just wanted to make sure that this was a good idea, that you all felt like it was okay, and get your support with it.
Yeah, I think it makes sense, and we certainly want to remedy any technical difficulties and access issues between the public and your office. I have one question for Amit regarding, whether or not Verizon can provide this service.
Yeah, we talked about that too, and we talked about getting a bid from Verizon. We just haven't. We could. I do think that's worth looking into, since we do have so many county cell
Yeah,
phones,
and I
that
would-
if that would be an option.
Yeah, and I was recently contacted by our representative with Verizon regarding some existing and, any potential services, but she's been auditing our account and identified savings of an upwards of like $28,000 annually. So much gratitude to Tara and Amit and this woman for working on the audit and assessment of our account. And so I think that would be my last question. But I think in theory, the concept is great. And if we can work with Amit and Verizon and make sure that we've exhausted kind of the best avenue to do that and do it swiftly so that there's not or there's least impact to your department and to the public for calling in, that would be my request.
Yeah,
Commissioners?
yeah, I can check on with Amit on that.
Okay. Any other questions for Janine?
I don't have any questions for Janine other than this is just going to be, I'm anticipating it being kind of a vital piece of your staff being able to work remotely. Yes.
Yeah, and I will say they have been very gracious about trying to figure it out as they go, given the current phone structure. It's quite baffling at times, and in addition to the huge increase in caseload, they've been dealing with this. So they are very excited about something that will actually be functional and easy to use and effective. So yeah.
Okay. Makes sense. Cool. Thanks, Janine. I don't have any other questions.
I don't have any other questions either. I'll just say, I really like the idea of that kind of seamless approach where incoming calls don't get, funneled either onto sort of the hard line, someone's voicemail at their desk that they maybe don't check. I really like this approach.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
In terms of just sort of being seamless to people calling in.
Well, Janine, I will.
Well, and there's also voicemails can get recorded on by email. So, there's just all kinds of benefits to it. So, yeah.
Janine, I'll just send out an email soon after this conversation to Amit and copying you and figure out whether we vetted that through Verizon and share that contact with him to just make that
Great.
To vet that and I think we can move along putting it in place of our existing phone system.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Janine.
And what else? Let's see.
So
Okay.
Janine, before you hop off, can you come on Thursday to talk about the probation space with probation?
Yeah, it looked like 3:00 on Thursday was the time everyone was talking about. Is that or?
Yeah, no, 3:00 on Thursday is correct. And I think my question to you about that is there anything that you would want us to do internally in terms of communication to your staff to kind of hit off any rumors that they might be concerned about?
I think if we can just make it clear nothing has been decided for sure yet, and that we're still in the process of analyzing and looking at options and
Okay.
maybe even that all communication about it will come from a certain communication person, like what's the point person or somewhere that might help.
Sarah's really taking the lead on that.
About it.
Yeah, and Sarah's really taking the lead on that. So I'm wondering, Sarah, if it would be helpful if you could or I don't mind sending something out to all county employees, but I mean, I think, or if we can send something to Janine about where we're at in the process, and then Janine can pass that on to her employees to kind of calm any anxieties about that right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, or just go ahead.
no, Janine, I guess I'd like to hear from you, and I'm confused as to whether you'd like us to push that out countywide. Because I thought that the communication, the chain of communication was going from the group conversations and potential through you, and I don't think that was a problem.
I think my staff is okay. I've just reassured them that nothing's happening yet. It might just be good if there was some communication about what the official source of information is on this. You know what I mean? Like when
Sure.
decisions have been made or the status of the project, like who's the point person at the county who's speaking to that, maybe. I don't know.
Okay. We can send that out across to directors, I think, and elected officials, or do we think the entire staff?
Maybe just directors and elected officials would be good, just so that, and just to say if there's any questions, here are the people to ask or something like that.
Yeah, that's fine. Then I can be, I think, yeah, Janine, you and I can be those point people. We have kind of the same information. So, all right. And then, yeah, on Thursday, I think we will talk through and kind of just update Commissioner Fiedler on the project and some of the elements. And I suspect out of that, some tasks moving forward, one of which to include after considering the proposal of any kind of renovation from the state, moving forward with obtaining some sort of quote on that work that could be done at the annex, but we'll hit all those on Thursday, I think. Do we need to know anything else for Thursday, Janine?
I don't think so. I think it will really be them talking about what their needs are. I'm sort of on the same place where you all are. We'll just need to look at it.
Well, yeah, I think we have understood what their needs are, and then we have just been trying to make sure that, your office needs are also met with those. So I hope that we've come to and gotten a good solution for everyone. We'll just get on the same page on Thursday and make sure that we don't need to kind of do any more vetting of any kind of design on that.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else, commissioners? Kayla?
Thank you.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Okay, I'll send out an email to elected officials and directors on, just some updates there.
Just one thing, and sorry, I don't see that Thursday meeting on my calendar. If there was an invite that went out, if you could make sure.
Jeff, I will send one right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Kayla, are you posting that as a special meeting or in a work session?
I had it just posted as a work session.
Do we want to solicit? If we want to solicit bids, I guess we could solicit bids and the decision to award. I don't know, maybe we want to post that as a special meeting.
Okay.
Oh, please.
Okay.
Okay,
I can change that.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Sorry, taking note here. Okay. What do we have next? Okay, so the next on the agenda is an update from the CDOT and the COSI Trail plan on the Crossroads Trail. I wanted to bring this to the board because I just want to be sure that we are all in agreement on the decision made last year to steward this project of this trail connection, which is a connection. Commissioner Fiedler, are you familiar with the location and general concept of the trail connection?
Yeah, as I understand, it's kind of like down by the Hayden Meadows, and it would allow public access across the rail. I mean, the rail and Highway 24 and the Arkansas River all kind of meet.
Exactly.
And this is a public access, ability across all those different rights of ways and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yeah, so, and if it's helpful for me to pull up an image to talk through this and think about it, I have that queued up for us. But with the railroad information that came to us, at the beginning of January, and granted, I don't think anybody can project what kind of timeline that looks like. But I just want to be sure that the board, has considered all of that. And we could invite Mike Conlon to a conversation or a work session with us as well, but there are, he's raised a couple of questions on some new permitting requirements from CDOT that's come up. And I've asked for, any kind of new projection of scope, rather than, I think we had looked at, 10,000 in managing that project and 6,000 in the permitting, and some of those other pieces. And then a in-kind, dedicated in-kind from Public Works through the spring, of I think a few days, but I'm not sure I'm remembering what that even looked like. So I just wanted to bring that back to the board since there was kind of some variables that were unanticipated and see if y'all had any other thoughts on moving forward with the project. Do we have any kind of threshold on, should CDOT scoping or requests come in, and should the project budget be inflated by a certain amount that we want to think about stopping that, or would we want to stop now because we really don't know what the railroad and railway impacts might be to that project?
Sarah, would you, I recall sort of like physically where the project is, but I don't have any handle on sort of what the current budget is versus, what those kind of upgraded requirements are. So it's hard to answer your question. I'll say, I don't know if you can pull that up. My sense is that the two things is that the timing of when, I guess if it's requirements for when that rail line might actually go active, that's a long, realistically, that's a pretty long way off if it happens at all. And the second is, that issue of the cost of railroad crossings has come up and would be something that we would want to discuss, with that railroad operator. As I understand it, they're not under any obligation to help pay for some or all of that, but it would certainly be something from the community interest perspective to put on. So all I'll just say is my initial sense is that there's a likelihood that cost might either never happen or could be borne by the railroad as part of their, hundreds of millions of dollars of upgrades through the whole line.
And I apologize. I really, there's been such a flurry of emails that have come in from Mike Conlon in response to CDOT, and I don't have that. So I think really the best result from this conversation is just to perhaps maybe we request you know, a work session with him to talk us through, you know, what new items there might be and where the scope of the project may be expanded, and what those implications are. I'm happy to do that. And I
Yeah.
think he'd be happy to, you know, sit with us and have that conversation as well. And I apologize for not, you know, preparing and asking him to join us today. I wasn't quite sure what our, you know, time and availability would be. But it sounds like perhaps we should schedule a work session with him to talk through some of those details. And a
That sounds
general
good.
update,
Yeah.
which we've asked him, you know, and set forth as managing and kind of leading that project, requested, you know, updates to the board. So this will be our first one. I think probably the February 9th work session will be quite full with, if we aren't able to get everyone's schedules to align on the body cam and law enforcement issue. Is there another time perhaps before then that everybody would be available? Or do you want me to look at the calendars and throw out some dates, including Mike Conlon?
Maybe could you coordinate with Mike Conlon and throw us some dates?
Okay.
I think that might work the best.
That sounds good.
Okay. And will next week work, or do you want to shoot for a time the week of the 8th or beyond?
I just have a large chunk of time that I need to be out for an eye appointment, but other than that, I should be on Wednesday, but Thursday looks pretty open right now.
Okay.
11th. Yeah.
Okay. I'll ask about the week of the 8th, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys. Okay. And then I think next is the railway update and public comment document. Commissioner Fiedler has taken the lead on putting that together for us. So if you want to go ahead and guide the conversation there, please.
Yeah, thank you. So this is one strand of the larger Tennessee Pass Railroad conversation. It is not directly about the new lease agreement on the Tennessee Pass. What it is there is a new railroad proposed construction in Utah to connect to some oil and potentially gas and coal, but oil development in Utah, and it's a new railroad construction application to the Federal Surface Transportation Board to connect to existing, rail that would then come through Eagle County and Colorado through the Moffett Tunnel. There are comments due on the 28th of January on the draft environmental impact statement of that project. That's a federal EIS because it's going before the federal board. So Eagle County has taken the lead on weighing in on that. And the reason it relates to us is that with this new possibility of the Tennessee Pass line opening up, we have a reasonable comment to make on that draft EIS is that it also include the downline impacts of oil and other freight, possibly gas or coal, coming through Tennessee Pass. And this has been raised, as a concern, oil trains coming down through the Arkansas River watershed. But in any case, at this point, the filing that we potentially would join on the 28th is just to make the comment on the draft EIS that it should now also include the downline impacts on the Tennessee Pass line, not just the Moffett Tunnel line. That seems quite reasonable to me. That's a new development since the draft EIS was prepared, but certainly should be within the scope. So, and again, this is essentially no cost to the county. We're just being invited to join an effort led by Eagle County, but Chaffey County is also on board along with many of the cities, municipalities in Eagle County. So again, no cost to us. It's just our option to add our name to that. And from what I've seen, the draft comments seem well drafted by a knowledgeable firm and making a very reasonable request to broaden the study of that line. And again, as I said at the beginning, this is sort of a bit of a tangential thread to the core question of what the Tennessee Pass line looks like. But if this new line out of Utah was approved and built, it would increase the likelihood of oil trains possibly coming through the Tennessee Pass. There are a lot of steps before that happens, but this is one chance to weigh in, now in a timely fashion to get that consideration reviewed in that record. So I'll stop there and take any questions. And sorry, I should say that we have not yet seen the sort of final review draft of those comments. They've been hoping to get them done for this meeting. So if we think we want to join, we would need to hold a quick meeting to sort of review and approve putting our name on those comments before the end of the day of the 28th.
So would it be most beneficial for us to take that off of our agenda for this afternoon and then put that on an agenda on Thursday afternoon with probation if we're anticipating those comments being finalized by then?
Yeah, and if Thursday will be a session where we could take an action and actually vote on joining, then yes, that would be appropriate. And I was just raising it here because I thought we might have the comments to actually look at and discuss here. We just don't have those yet. So this is more just an update so that we have a few more days to ponder it.
Okay. No, thank you for bringing that and keeping an eye on that issue. I think just for, information and kind of context, this is the same kind of thing with like referral agencies and permitting that we do internally at the county or applications that come to the division. People object, and really with the biggest motivation to just pull a trigger to kind of take a pause or add, like you explained, Jeff, that expansion of consideration for effects. So I think that's completely appropriate. I do wonder though, the primary concern on I think it's just food for thought, not any point of contention or debate really, but I think, as you said, that, should that come through at the Moffett Tunnel, that doesn't really affect our basin. And so the primary concern, environmental concern of the water with that activity may not be a direct threat, but the likelihood of that being permitted and then encouraging, I guess, use of the Tennessee Pass line is probably some of the concern. So if we have a chance to flag that now, great. And/or I think that's just worth keeping a part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what the comment would be asking, and if accepted would achieve. It would basically get some work done, under this current EIS process, examining the those safety and environmental impacts, and I should say it's not just environmental impact. It would be like air quality, like all the factors they consider in the impact statement. We're basically just asking to extend into our basin and not just the Moffett line. So sorry, that was a rambling comment. I think the point is, like, if they accept this comment and do the work, we would then have some good analytical work done to better, at the very least, we'd have a better handle on what some knowledgeable people think would be the impacts.
Okay.
I like it.
So I'll forward that as soon as I see the review draft, and yeah, we can take it up for a potential decision on Thursday.
Okay.
One thing I forgot to say, we have received one sort of formal written comment from Jeff Guthrie. He emailed, I think he included all of us and Patty, and he just asked that be considered in our record. I think he addresses a whole bunch of issues beyond this Utah issue, but we should just state here and keep that letter sort of in our files for when we discuss, in some of the other venues with the railroad, more specific to the Tennessee Pass and our basin.
Okay. Thanks.
Cool.
Well, go ahead, Commissioner Marcella.
No, I just thank you for taking that on, Jeff. I don't feel like I have any other questions at this point. And I think that it's been very productive for us to have that regional approach to this public comment session. So it's definitely helped to alleviate that burden a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, we'll add that to the agenda on Thursday.
So Sarah, in creating an agenda for Thursday, I have the railroad. So we'll take that off of our agenda this afternoon, I'm assuming, and move that to Thursday. And then what was the other thing that you wanted to vote on Thursday?
Just probation and being able to kind of formally move forward with collecting bids and getting some cost analysis on that. And probably, sorry, okay, thinking. We'll have to also approach our current lease with probation and make a proposal to the property owners for probably an extension beyond our current lease expiration of the end of the month in March of this year. So perhaps we can discuss that as part of the probation conversation.
Okay. So how should I write that on the agenda?
I think probation space and annex, or probation space conversation, desired outcomes, decision on moving forward with renovations or construction pieces, and current lease or rent agreements.
With renovation and construction?
Yeah, decision on renovation and construction, and determination on proposal for any kind of rent agreement. Sorry. Negotiation or proposal to, we need to bring a proposal to the Hornings and maybe we can determine with the group on Thursday what what that time frame would be like, whether we're looking at 2 or 3 months past
Okay.
the current expiration of our lease.
Okay. And then railway public comment.
Mm-hmm. If
Okay.
Mike Conlon needs or would like to speak with us sooner, is Thursday a time to invite him?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. I could give him that option as
Okay.
well.
That sounds good. Can I circle back to one more thing? The courthouse retrofit with Sheriff Reyes.
Yeah.
I had sent you guys that RFP, that draft RFP, for that scope of work. How do you want to proceed with that?
Just the wall piece?
Yeah.
The walls?
Yeah.
And is that something we've determined can't, because I know we've done some of that work in-house with maintenance. And they've, built false walls and whatnot, but is this a little more technical that we feel like we need to contract out that work?
I am unsure. I have not had that conversation with Michael Irwin. Paul, do you have anything that you would add there, or any expertise that you would chime in on? I think really the only piece that we'd have to have a contractor install or do and design is the egress on the second floor. So where the finance offices are now is a secondary egress down and out through the sheriff's office. And so that will have to maintain its egress access through a panic button style type thing. And so that will have to take some special installation.
Okay. And that would be electrical.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if you feel like you can have Michael Irwin coordinate to get that done, or if you feel like that's something that's not too far out of reach for maintenance.
And do you have a comment?
Well, I'm sorry, I wasn't part of that review with Paul, but just from the standpoint of any commercial modification, there needs to be a design professional included, or potentially an engineer, depending on structural impact. And I think that's what I had heard about the front wall, and then some intricacies of the, just of this modification to retrofit these new improvements to the building. So I do think that, I think the concern was that we may need to have some structural consideration, as well as the code does call for anything that's a public space or commercial needing qualified design docs. So I don't know the whole scope of the project, but that's what Paul had shared with me, is that, that we needed to consider that.
Okay.
So if I send you a copy of that draft RFP, Anne, can you take a look at it?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can review it with Paul and get right back to you with that.
Okay.
I wonder, Kayla, if we want to combine the work in the courthouse and the annex, potentially,
Well, maybe.
just to put that out as one overall project. It's pretty similar. It seems pretty similar, adding, some walls or office space. Why don't we see if we can get a response and a review from land use and Michael Irwin on that RFP and that work, and kind of make a decision to move forward on pushing that out after the conversation on Thursday?
Okay.
Well, and do we want to pull up the calendar? We scheduled 3 o'clock on Thursday with probation. Do we want to, with some of these other items, do we want to start that meeting earlier if Mike Conlon is available? to give us an overview on the project that day. Or do we want to keep the start time at 3? I'm sorry, I'm looking up why we had. It looks like we have availability, and I think 3 o'clock was proposed by the probation folks and state folks. Let me reach out to Mike Conlon and see if that's even an option. We have to consider that. But do either of you have a problem starting at 2 if we add that Crossroads Trail update to that agenda?
I don't think so. So do you want me to add that discussion on the agenda then
The Crossroads Trail?
on Thursday?
Let me verify that that's even, that Mike would be available. I'll call him when we're done with this and let you know.
Okay, I will wait until tomorrow morning to put this final agenda together.
Okay,
I just want to get it posted within the 24 hours to post it.
yeah, absolutely. All right. Okay, so Thursday probation and adding our name to the comments on the rail line
Okay.
as of yet so far. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Any other, I see Josh has joined us. Any other comments or questions or issues or discussion on what we've talked about today?
Are you, may I ask, this courthouse retrofit, is that not part and parcel of the,
The foyer,
yes,
no, in a word, no, I would say. I think that's a separate, there was a proposal that's been talked about for a couple of years in putting up a wall upstairs and kind of securing the courts
I'm aware.
offices. Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's two separate
right.
things.
No,
Really.
I get it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for looking over that for our conversation Thursday. Anything else, commissioners?
I don't believe so. I just resent the RFP for the courthouse retrofit and asked for that documentation on it from Paul and Mike and Ann of that review.
Great.
Cool.
Okay. Jeff?
No, I think we covered everything on our agenda.
So we're going to meet today at 2 to go into executive session. In speaking to Katie Welter, the only thing that we need is we just need the county to provide a Zoom link for the executive session piece, correct, Chris?
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So
So,
we are off this meeting.
okay, so you'll send that to us and Chris and Katie, yeah?
Well, yes.
Okay.
All right. I think we're good. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the conversation today, and we'll see y'all here shortly at 2.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.